going to start with questions that have been prepared by the league. And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Eustace. These questions will be for 2 minutes, to the timekeepers. 2-minute response from each of the candidates. So, Mr. Eustace, what source of funding do you feel is most appropriate for our transportation infrastructure? How would you assure that all drivers, both resident and out of state, pay an appropriate share for the maintenance of our roads and bridges?
Thank you. Great question. I sponsored a bill that takes the funds that go to renewable automobiles to be included in the Transportation Trust Fund. I drive an electric vehicle. I don't pay gasoline taxes, and ours is the second lowest in the nation. So we sponsored a bill for CNG, compressed natural gas, hydrogen vehicles, and electric vehicles to pay their fair share that comes out of taxes they already pay. That's one of the ways we can fill in the Transportation Trust Fund. Another thing my running mate and I are in favor of raising the gasoline tax because it's a regressive tax and takes its hit on the people that can least afford it. We do feel that if such a tax is imposed, that it would be necessary to have a constitutional guarantee that that fund could not be used for other things, only for fixing the transportation problems, such as bridges and roads. There are many other avenues we should look at before we raise the taxes. New Jersey is very taxed, and we in Bergen County pay high taxes. The other thing is we could ask our Congress people to represent us better. You know that New Jersey is one of the states that gets the least amount of money for their return in their federal tax dollar. And this area is probably close to 20% of the GNP on what we pay in, and we do not get that back. The transportation fund should be helped by our federal dollars, and that's one of the ways we can recover that fund.
Thank you. Mr. Coppola, how would you assure that all drivers, both resident and out of state, pay an appropriate share for the maintenance of our roads and bridges?
Thank you. Well, fundamentally, I would say the good news is New Jersey has plenty of money. We don't have a revenue problem, it's a spending problem. I know someone said to me, well, Anthony, that's old hat, we've heard that before. Well, it is old hat, but it's the problem. The mandated spending, I think, is putting the crunch on things. You have to spend no matter what. If you're bringing in less revenue, as a business owner myself, 22 years, I've never been in debt in my business. I've never been in the red. I'm always in the black because it's a living, breathing, malleable situation. So if you're not bringing in funds, you have to balance it with what you're bringing in. So we have the money. We'll just have to reallocate where that money is and where the money goes because we do have it. It's just, again, you can't, it's not going to come at the cost of another gas tax. Because if that were the case, if putting another tax into place was the cure, it wouldn't be in the problem that we're in. It doesn't make sense. So I'd say you have to triage, you have to, what's most important in any business, in any spreadsheet, and work your way down. So this is going to be important that it has to come out or be restructured from somewhere else. It needs to be a paradigm shift in how we fund. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Lagan, can you add to that?
Yes, absolutely. As something you just talked about, the gas tax being a regressive tax, and it would be the easiest thing to do is just to say tax. Tax is not what we're for. And if you look historically, when New Jersey's done, they've developed funds, they've taxed people with money from the fund, was never utilized for that fund, and pulled into the general budget. This governor's done it many times, the governors before him have done it, and it's a huge problem. So if anyone's going to talk about a gas tax, the first things first is it has to be constitutionally dedicated. And we put our money where our mouths are, and we sponsor legislation that will constitutionally dedicate the gas tax right to the Transportation Trust Fund. Now, we are in a serious situation right now. We do need money for the Transportation Trust Fund, but before going and saying, let's tax people, there are other things we can do. I agree that New Jersey doesn't spend their money properly. If you look at how much we spend on per mile, we spend $2 million per mile in construction, which is outrageous. It's gotten for 12 years, in the past 15 years, that's been raised 12 times. And if you look at how much money we spend on administrative costs, we spend $44,000 per mile in administrative costs. And I think we need, as a government, to possibly do an overhaul of our transportation departments, the DOT, the New Jersey Turnpike Authority, to see exactly why so much money is being spent per mile on construction. So there are other things like public-private partnerships. There are other things that we can consider before running to a tax. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Mr. Capola, variation on a transportation thing here. How would you propose to improve transparency in the operations at the Port Authority?
Have transparency at the Port Authority. I mean, you're gonna more than likely have to have some piece of law or legislation to do so. You can't, there has to be a referee in the ring. So there'll have to be new parameters, new rules set forth, and there should be transparency. As a business owner, I'm transparent with what I spend through my IRS tax returns, my CPA. So there has to be transparency, and it has to be, there has to be a mandate or a law or some kind of new rules to make sure that happens. To have someone watch the flock, so to speak. That's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Lagana, transparency at the Port Authority.
Yes, well, the easiest thing to do is for the governor to sign the legislation that the Assembly and the Senate sent. And that bill specifically created transparency. We saw over the past couple of years what the Port Authority has turned into. It's become a shadow organization. It's spent more money on overtime costs than it has on actual transportation projects, which again really makes you scratch your head and think about exactly what they're doing there. The legislation was comprehensive. I believe it was bipartisan, and went to the governor's desk, and the governor didn't like it, and Governor Cuomo vetoed it. And it was bipartisan because both the New York Assembly and the New York Senate, as well as the New Jersey Assembly and the New Jersey Senate, passed, and by law they have to be the same legislation, passed both houses in both states, went to each governor's, and the governor decided they were going to deal with it because I think that the Port Authority has become their stomping ground, and they don't like transparency. And we tried. It was an attempt to override the veto, and all the Republicans who thought it was a great idea to begin with turned back and all of a sudden found some problems with it. So we've done all the work, and 2 states have done all the work. We sent it to the governors, and they didn't like it. So I think that the governor should sign the bill that was sent in by the legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Eustace, can you add to that?
I can. Thank you both gentlemen for shedding some light on this. Transparency, the bill was agreed to in both houses twice, and the governor vetoed it twice. And the solution is not just the governor. The solution is when people sit at these tables and tell you that they're going to vote their conscience, or if they send you to Trenton, they're going to vote your conscience, you have to make sure that happens. What happens is people will sit around the table and say, we represent the same towns. This happens quite frequently. And we all agree, and it makes it through committee, and it makes it through both houses. And then when it comes time to override the governor's veto, no one has the wherewithal to override the governor's veto. The problem is, people need to go to Trenton to vote their conscience. And right now, not a single Republican has voted to override not any of the governor's vetoes. And that's why we're in the dire straits we are now.
Thank you. I'm going to start with some questions now from the floor. You can't hear me? Okay. I'm going to, he's a good clue person. I'm going to start with questions from the floor now. And I'm going to open with one, and I'm going to address it to you, Mr. Lagana, first. Why have both of you co-sponsored and repeatedly voted for the Foreclosure Transformation Act? This act would use state funds to buy foreclosed homes to place hard-to-place persons. Why have you co-sponsored that, Mr. Lagana?
Because it's good legislation and it's good public policy. New Jersey's foreclosure rate is astronomical. We lead the nation, I believe, and it's because we have our foreclosure system is judicially run, so it does take a little bit longer. There were people who were preyed upon by banks and lenders in 2008 and prior to that, and there's a 1,000-day waiting period right now in the state of New Jersey before the home can be foreclosed on. That being said, there are certain neighborhoods in certain areas where homes are sitting there, there are weeds growing, they're falling apart, they're in disrepair, no one's taking care of it. And I don't want to speak for Tim, but my personal opinion is why not do some good with these homes? And and place persons there who need assistance. Because, we're not all sitting on a pot of gold, and there are people in the state that do need state help. And we recognize that, and I feel it's good public policy, and I'll support it again.
Okay, Mr. Capola, can you address the Foreclosure Transformation Act?
Sure. I mean, right, we're having a situation, and every state is different in how they foreclose on homes, okay? I'm a property owner and a landlord. There has to be something done, but I have an issue with, and again, no doubt, there has to be something done to help people who are in foreclosures, and absolutely, when the bubble popped, there was a big problem. There was absolutely predatory lending and whatnot. But I stop at the door where I don't know if everything is the cure by government. Here we go again. It's like Big Brother knows better. We're going to come in, and the state is going to fund this. That's code for we're going to fund this. And again, it's a good idea. We want to help people, but we have to be careful because again, that's on the backs of the taxpayers. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be helpful to those people, but be very careful and gingerly walk that line because again, I'm not initially a fan of taxpayer dollars going to this. There has to be another way to solve this unfortunate problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eustace?
Yes, if you don't mind. Years ago, when the financial collapse occurred, the previous president threw the TARP program at banks and attempted to solve the foreclosure problem by giving money to banks. The banks built new banks,